With the open negotiating period and new league year right around the corner, we're dropping a bonus episode to go over the running backs and tight ends and our offseason preview series. That's coming up now on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this bonus episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders. And from there, you'll get text messages straight from me. No hashtags, no filters needed, no app to download. Simply just text messages from me. You send them to me, and we discuss everything going on with the Washington Commanders. Again, join subtext.com/Locked On Commanders to get in on that action and go beyond the show today. I'm David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderCountry.com, a part of Sports Illustrated's FanNation. I'm here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, everydayers greatly appreciate your continued support for the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code Locked On, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode, we are going to identify targets in the NFL draft and free agency for the tight end and running back groups for the Washington Commanders. And we got one more mailbag question that we could not get in yesterday, so we're going to get it in here today about the NFL offseason schedule. But first, we've got to start with who is currently on the Washington Commanders roster for the running backs and the tight end groups. And looking at the 2024 Commanders roster, your current running backs are Brian Robinson Jr. and Chris Rodriguez Jr. So two young running backs, Brian Robinson Jr. counting for about $1.37 million against the salary cap in 2024, his third season out of Alabama since being drafted by the Washington Commanders. Last year, he had 11.86 carries per game. That was his average, which was down from 2022 when he had 17.08 carries per game. Quite the big difference, of course. I mean, it's something that we've talked about a lot is how much former offensive coordinator, assistant head coach Eric Bieniemy really put on Sam Howell's shoulders in the passing game. Nearly 6 carries per game difference for Brian Robinson from his rookie season to his second season. Made even more astounding given the fact that his rookie season, he was actually coming off of a gunshot injury by the time he actually got on the playing field, whereas in his sophomore season last year was coming in relatively healthy. 4.12 yards per carry in 2023 went up from 3.89 yards per carry in 2022. So while B-Rob didn't get as many carries in his second season as he did in his rookie season, certainly made the best of them and, of course, expanded his role as a receiver as well. So total carries evening out just a little bit. Not there's still a little bit of a gap there, but not quite as much work as maybe we wanted from Brian Robinson Jr. And then Chris Rodriguez Jr. entering his second season this season, rookie last year out of Kentucky, arguably the best rookie in the NFL draft class last year, which is, again, kind of sad for the draft class as a whole when you're considering that he's a day 3 pick. Quan Martin kind of came on pretty strong there at the end of the season, maybe making a case to be the best guy there. But Chris Rodriguez Jr. overall did very well. He's going to count for less than $1 million against the 2024 salary cap for the Commanders, averaged 4.84 yards per carry in 2023 while gaining 247 yards on 51 carries with 2 rushing touchdowns. Those are your only 2 current members in the running back group on the active 2024 roster, just in general. For tight ends, newcomer Zach Ertz is now the veteran in the room. His deal's worth up to $5 million. Don't have the particulars yet on how much is guaranteed and how much of it is incentives, but you can pretty much bet that all $5 million will count against the salary cap to begin with. His 12th year in the NFL coming up. He had 27 receptions in 7 games with the Arizona Cardinals last year before eventually being released. Eventually ended up with the Detroit Lions on the practice squad. That was pretty much it for him. 187 yards receiving last year, 1 touchdown. He only had a 29.6 pass blocking grade in his only full season under offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. And I know a lot of people made that connection. Obviously, Zach Ertz playing under Coach Kingsbury and with the Arizona Cardinals during his time there. But he had a 50.1 run blocking grade according to PFF. So the pass blocking, not Zach Ertz's forte. Under Cliff Kingsbury, which will tell you that he's not being brought in to be a dominant pass blocker. He's being brought in to be an okay run blocker, but then also contribute in the passing game, or maybe, as I've speculated, contribute more so as a veteran leader to help the offense as a whole learn the language, learn kind of what Coach Kingsbury is going to expect and what they want to do, just kind of accelerate getting them on the same page. similar to the way that we expected Andrew Wiley to last year. Behind Zach Ertz right now, or I don't even say behind because I'm not putting this in like a depth order, depth chart order. I mean, obviously Brian Robinson is ahead of Chris Rodriguez Jr., but Zach Ertz really just the newcomer. I put him there first. John Bates is also coming back. He's going to account for $3.29 million against the salary cap right now. Has a dead cap figure of $180.6 thousand, which means the Washington Commanders could save over $3 million in salary cap if they actually move on from John Bates before his fourth year fully commences. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to, but just if they go out and sign a few more tight ends or a couple more tight ends, and if they draft another one, John Bates could find himself on the bubble sooner rather than later. 19 catches in 2023 for 151 yards, 7.9 yards per reception, had a 79 pass blocking grade, which is pretty good, 46.3 run blocking grade in 2023. I think those two things right there, plus his better than expected receiving performance in his NFL career so far, kind of keep him on the roster. So again, I'm not saying that I think John Bates is going to get cut or even should get cut. Just something to keep in mind if the Washington Commanders do want to save a few $1 million. They certainly have the ability to do there if they address the tight end position through other means that they feel more confident in. Cole Turner is someone that's going to be interesting to watch this season, given Cliff Kingsbury's offense and his proclivity for passing more and not passing more, but wanting a more of a vertical pass type attack. And then you look at Zach Ertz, and if you look at the tight ends currently on the Commanders roster, who looks more like Zach Ertz as far as play style, Cole Turner does. So perhaps a sign of good things to come for Cole Turner. He's going to count for a little over $1 million on the books this year. Had 11 catches for 120 yards in 2023. He'll be coming into his third NFL season. Had a 17.1 pass blocking grade, 68.3 run block grade in 2023. So his run blocking was a lot cleaner than his pass blocking. So you're definitely not leaning on him to be a blocker. But again, if the Commanders brought in Zach Ertz to be that veteran receiving tight end, Cole Turner may see a little bit of an uptick in his own play as well. Armani Rogers also on the roster for 2024, $990,000 against the cap. His third year in the NFL, second year of service. The way that it works, so he missed all of 2023 with an Achilles injury, so that's not counted as a year of service for him, credited with just 1 year of NFL service because of that. In the dead salary cap category, Logan Thomas, the veteran released earlier this offseason, he counts for $1.75 million against the salary cap. Flipping over to the running backs and the tight ends that are going to be free agents coming from the roster, Antonio Gibson, Alex Arma, Derek Gore, all set to become free agents when the new league year begins next Wednesday. All of them will be available to negotiate with other teams beginning Monday afternoon. Tight ends, Logan Thomas obviously being released. He's currently allowed to negotiate with teams. Curtis Hodges, Brandon Dillon also currently do not have contracts with Washington Commanders, but were on the team in 2023. As far as return predictions, I think that nobody, so I'm kind of bringing this down, right? Better than a 75% chance they return, 50% chance they return, less than 50% chance they return. I don't think anybody has a 75% or higher chance of returning on the current free agent list. Obviously, Logan Thomas is not returning, or else they wouldn't have released him. I think Antonio Gibson probably has about a 50-50 chance, so I have him in the 50% chance group. There, I think Antonio Gibson brings a good dynamic to the running back room. And when you look at B-Rob, you look at C-Rod, you don't really see that dynamic pass catching ability, that receiver type running back ability. Obviously, Brian Robinson can catch the ball. I do think that Chris Rodriguez is capable of catching the ball more than he's been able to show so far. But AG has that more. He's got a receiver background, so you can use him on more than just your typical running back routes. If you need to motion him out into the flat or into the slot or something and use him to run an actual receiver route, he has a little bit more of a skill set to do that. Less than a 50% chance of returning. I think Arma, Gore, Hodges, Dillon, basically the rest of those guys have less than a 50% chance. And of course, Logan Thomas will not be coming back. But the rooms are not set. You're not going to come into the NFL season with two running backs. And honestly, you're probably not even going to come in with just these four tight ends. The Washington Commanders, even though they go sign Zach Ertz, I don't think they're done addressing the tight end room. So who could be added to the group through free agency in the NFL draft? That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. Now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Continuing with today's episode of Locked On Commanders, this bonus episode. Thanks for making Locked On Commanders your first listen today and every day. Everydayers, come back tomorrow for Monday. We'll have our final position group preview. We're looking at defensive line, so we'll look at interior. We'll look at the edge as well, and we're going to talk about the final NFL draft order that has been set by the NFL over the weekend. Locked On has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with your local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So we talked about the guys in the running back and tight end rooms that are returning to the Washington Commanders currently for 2024, including Zach Ertz, who's currently on the 2024 roster because of his signing earlier this offseason. Now let's look at some external free agents that could also be joining the group. And we are going to start with the running backs, but we're going to also talk about the tight ends because, again, I don't think Zach Ertz is just your end-all, be-all, slam dunk, number one tight end. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason that he was kind of out there on the open market after he and the Cardinals split. He ended up on the Detroit Lions practice squad. I'm not trying to dog the guy or anything like that. I just don't think that he's just your lock number one tight end coming into the offseason. So certainly still some moves that could be made in that position group. Looking at running backs, though, same thing we've been doing all offseason. Best option, acceptable option, risky option. And I think you have to go best option here. Saquon Barkley from the New York Giants. And again, this is a guy we talked about recently this week, but we talked about it in the light of safety Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney is out there as a free agent. He'll be able to negotiate with teams starting on Monday. And if the Washington Commanders go and make Xavier McKinney a contract that is basically front-loaded, that forces the New York Giants to make a decision based on their cap space, they only have about $38 million in cap space. When you account for the $10 million that they need to sign their draft class, you knock that down to $28 million. If you give Xavier McKinney most of his money up front, it takes a good chunk of your cap space this year. But again, you've got almost $100 million in cap space, so you can afford to kind of do that. And it might force the New York Giants, as much as they might want to match the deal, to not be able to in order to try to keep a guy like Saquon Barkley. But Saquon Barkley, of course, is going to have options himself. Over the cap projects Barkley's next deal to be about 3 years, $34.5 million, $11.5 million annual, which is about the equivalent to what Green Bay Packers running back Aaron Jones is making right about now. And I would say, honestly, that Saquon Barkley is probably better than Aaron Jones. Last year, Barkley appeared in 14 games, had 6 rushing touchdowns, carried the ball for 3.89 yards per carry. Again, less than Brian Robinson, 41 catches, 226 yards, 5.5 yards per catch. And he turned 27 in this February. So he's already 27. He won't turn 28 until after the end of next season. Look, I think Saquon Barkley and Brian Robinson honestly have a very similar skill set and play style. I think Saquon Barkley right now probably ahead of Brian Robinson in the ability, but I don't think that Brian Robinson honestly is probably as far behind him as a lot of national pundits would be. And it's odd because typically when we talk about adding people to a running back group, you're kind of looking for that different flavor, right? You want, if you have a between the tackles kind of bullying, ramming type of running back, you want a faster, slicker. You look at the B-Rob, Antonio Gibson combination. You usually want that kind of contrast. This situation, if they were to bring in as a guy like Saquon Barkley, you're really not looking for a change of pace. You're more so looking for a duo that's just going to destroy defenses. Like, we're just going to pound the rock 30 to 40 times a game, and we got 2 dudes that are going to split these carries. Like, each of these guys is going to get about 15 carries per game. You're getting the ball run at you about 30 times a game, and we're just going to be nasty and control the clock and just keep your offense on the sideline. And then again, if either one of them gets injured, the good news is you now have a guy who's uninjured. Hopefully don't both get injured. That can certainly carry the workload. And I think that, if you're Brian Robinson, Saquon Barkley comes in, obviously the name experience, the name recognition, all that stuff probably is the first guy on the field. But I think if you're getting your amount of work that you want, could feasibly be the backup behind Saquon Barkley and actually get more work than he did last year, believe it or not. So it would be an interesting dichotomy. I don't know that would go as far as predict the Commanders being in the conversation, but I just think you can't make a list of best free agent running back and not put Saquon on there, even if you want to look at the way that the team is formulated. Now, if we want to look at the way the team is formulated and look for that Antonio Gibson who's not Antonio Gibson, then you get to our acceptable option, who's Tony Pollard, coming from the Dallas Cowboys. OTC projects him to get a 3-year deal worth $19.5 million. That's $6.5 million annually. That equates to about what Carolina gave Miles Sanders in his most recent deal. Last year, Pollard played 17 games for the Cowboys, 6 rushing touchdowns, 3.99 yards per carry, but he also turned in 55 catches, 311 yards, 5.65 yards per catch, and he turns 27 in April. So he's about to turn 27. Saquon Barkley already turned 27. Tony Pollard is much more of your Antonio Gibson type, while B-Rob is your starting, between the tackles type. I like that dynamic. And then you have Chris Rodriguez. Honestly, to me, if you get those 3 guys during free agency, you don't need to go draft anybody. You can wait until, get some UDFAs, get some third level, third phase free agents in to flesh out the roster. But as far as your top 3, I think you're pretty much set. The risky option, J.K. Dobbins, coming out of the Baltimore Ravens organization. OTC doesn't have a contract projection for him, but SpotTrack does. Puts it about 2 years, $4.37 million, $2.1 million on annual average. It's very cheap. It's about what the Eagles gave DeAndre Swift, or that's about what DeAndre Swift is playing for the Eagles. Dobbins only played 1 game last year, but he did have a rushing touchdown in that game. 2 catches, 15 yards as well. Turns 26 in December, but his injury list is what makes him a risk, right? September 2023, tore his Achilles. August 2021, hamstring, LCL, meniscus, ACL. December 2019, grade 3 ankle sprain. August 2016, fractured fibula. Some of that's going to beyond before he was even in the NFL. Some of that's while he was at college. All of those injuries on his right leg. So that's another part of the problem. J.K. Dobbins, when he's on the field, there's no doubting his performance, his ability. The problem is trying to keep him on the field. So if the Washington Commanders want to try to roll the dice on him, again, you bring him in for a fairly cheap deal. Maybe you get lucky and you get to be the team that enjoys healthy J.K. Dobbins. Who knows? Tight ends. The best option out there, as far as I see, is Dalton Schultz, coming from the Houston Texans. Previous to that, he was with the Dallas Cowboys. His OTC projected contract, 3 years, $24.5 million, $8.17 million per year. Played 15 games last year, connecting with C.J. Stroud 59 times, 635 yards, 5 touchdowns, 76.9 overall pass blocking grade, 59.9 run block grade in 2023. So I think that's really good. You have a good mixture of receiving ability and blocking ability. And what I really like about Dalton Schultz, what makes him my best option for tight ends to add to this group, is that he just got done playing with a first-year head coach. And, D'Amico Ryans was a true first-year head coach. Dan Quinn has been a head coach at least before. But again, first-year head coach here in Washington at least. And then you also look at him playing with a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud. So he's going to be comfortable in that type of environment, with that type of pressure on him. And he was a good safety blanket for C.J. Stroud. He could be a good safety blanket for a rookie quarterback if that is indeed the way the Washington Commanders go, which is what we're expecting at this time. The acceptable option, Hunter Henry, New England Patriots, arguably the most effective weapon that Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi tried to use in New England last year. His OTC projected contract, 2 years, $12 million. That's $6 million APY. Played 14 games last year, 42 catches, 419 yards, 6 touchdowns. Also had a 79 pass blocking grade, 64.4 run blocking grade. So his blocking actually grades out better than Schultz. But I think Schultz has a little bit more upside as a receiver compared to Hunter Henry. Either of those guys you'd be happy with. I think that's why, best option, acceptable option, right? The risky option, we're staying with the Patriots. Mike Gesicki. Gesicki is someone that I was interested in coming out of Miami last year. Really thought he would fit the Eric Bieniemy mold. However, actually, given the way that things panned out, probably a good thing that Gesicki didn't come here, because he is definitely not a blocking tight end. 42.4 pass block grade last year, 42 run block grade last year. Better than Cole Turner, but still not great, and maybe would have just not seen the field at all. With the Patriots, he got on the field all 17 games, had 29 catches, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, can you get maximum production out of him? And honestly, if you're only looking at him to be a receiver, he might actually be your guy. I still think the other guys, Hunter Henry and Dalton Schultz, still equal or better as receivers, but then also better as blockers. So I think you go with one of those 2 options. Both of them certainly affordable. So again, you like Zach Ertz. I think you like the veteran presence. You like the knowledge of Cliff Kingsbury that he's going to bring into the locker room. But I don't think the Washington Commanders are done addressing the group. Certainly could see a free agent addition here in this group. And you also might see a rookie join the group as well. Who are those possible targets? We'll jump into the NFL draft class coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this bonus episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Game Time, who says you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. They've got a whole lot of stuff, low price guarantee. They even give you event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. And Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after some of them start. It is the place for you to find your last-minute seats. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, looking at NFL draft class options for the Washington Commanders. And we're looking at the tight ends and the running backs. So a little bit of a mixed bag here. I've got 4 tight ends for you, 2 running backs. Again, my opinion on the running back group is you have a little bit less work there to do. You obviously like Brian Robinson as your number 1. I mean, if you bring in Saquon, probably your number 2, but you still like him there. Chris Rodriguez, I think, had a really solid rookie year with the work that he was able to get. I think that he's only going to take more steps forward as he comes into his sophomore season. So, I think that, you can address that position pretty solidly either in the free agent group, or if you really want to hit the draft, then a couple of options I'm going to give here in the middle of the draft will satisfy, I think, the needs there. So let's look at tight ends. Day 1 options here for tight ends. There's only one tight end that's really being projected on day 1. That is tight end Brock Bowers out of Georgia. He is PFF's number 5 overall prospect. So number 1 tight end, but number 5 overall player. Right now projected to go, late in the top 10, early teens. I've seen a couple of mock drafts that have him sliding like 15, 20 tight end. Unfortunately for Brock, not a huge priority position on day 1 for a lot of teams. They're looking for tackles, pass rushers, receivers, quarterbacks, all that stuff. But certainly going to go day 1. He'll probably be the only one who goes day 1. I don't expect anybody to go day 2. Or a second tight end rather to go day 2, but I am going to loop Jatavion Sanders out of Texas in that group, in our day 1 group, just because we want to get 2 prospects in there, and there are no day 1 running backs on this group. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs last year was kind of a surprise day 1, but everybody had him like early day 2, borderline into day 1. I mean, these guys, the top running back in some mock drafts is like 3rd round. I mean, I don't know if we'll get that far, but there's no Bijan Robinsons or anything like that in this year's running back group. So Jatavion Sanders, we're just going to mention him here. Again, he's a day 2 guy, but we're going to mention him here. If there was a tight end that might slip into the back end of day 1, it would be Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. He's PFF's number 40th overall player. Brock Bowers, going back to him real quick, 84.4 overall grade or better for the 3 years he was in college. Had a 70.1 total run block grade, had a 73.2 total pass block grade for his career. So solid blocker, solid receiver. Again, in the NFL, his blocking is not going to be a 70, 73. He's probably going to be closer like the 60s, 50s as a rookie, especially. But that's something you can work with certainly and try to get the better out of him as he develops in the NFL. Jatavion Sanders, he's got a 79 receiving grade in 2023 as a college tight end, PFF's number 40th overall player. And then day 2, again, Sanders probably going to be day 2, but we're also looking at tight end Cade Stover out of Ohio State. He's the number 109th ranked player by PFF. Had a 54.4 run block grade and a 68.6 pass block grade last year. Not great for a college tight end, right? Like the talent at the college level and the NFL level certainly far different, but overall his career was better. Overall, he had a 60.3 blocking grade in the run game, and then pass blocking was right around that 68, 67 mark for his career. Again, here's where we have our first running back. If you're looking for a running back for the Commanders, I think day 2 you can look at a guy like Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, PFF's number 81 overall ranked player, 5'11", 210 pounds. PFF scouting report on him says, quote, NFL caliber athlete for the running back position. Youth is both a positive because of lack of mileage and a negative, lack of consistent running back vision. But he has succeeded in both gap and zone blocking concepts, and has top tier pass protection ability for 3-down potential in the NFL, end quote. And again, I think if you're bringing in a guy like Jalen Wright, you're bringing in for kind of a specific role, and that role is more so kind of getting him in space where some of the vision issues early on aren't going to hurt him as much. Also ran a 4.38 40 at the NFL Scouting Combine, which you love. Day 3, though, I think maybe a guy that's becoming one of my favorite running backs in this year's group, Isaac Guerendo out of Louisville, PFS number 133 ranked player, 6'1", 225 pounds. So he's not a small kid, by any means. Ran a 4.3 340 at 6'1", 225. That's pretty slick, pretty dangerous. And then tight end Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, ranked number 140th currently by PFF, had an 81 receiving grade in college in his last season in 2023. Run blocking, last season 76.1 in run blocking, pass blocking 72.8, but his career numbers are much lower than that. So you wonder if that's a flash in the pan kind of one-time deal, or if that's really what Ben Sinnott is going to present as an NFL tight end. I think you're probably going to get a little mixture of both. So those are our tight ends and running backs in the NFL draft. That wraps up our tight end running back NFL draft preview. But before we get out of here for this bonus episode, Insider Keith sent me an audio question that I wasn't able to get in the mailbag episode, so I wanted to make sure we got it in here on this bonus.
Hey, David, a mailbag question, please. I've heard that in the NFL, when you get a new coach, you can have your rookie mini camp or your mini camps 2 weeks before the other teams can. Is that a rumor or is that true? Thanks.
All right, great question there from Keith. And on the mailbag, we did talk about some offseason schedule stuff, but I wanted to kind of flesh this one out completely and just didn't have time. So according to the collective bargaining agreement, April 1st, the first Monday in April, teams with new head coaches can begin their offseason workout programs. Every other team that does not have a new head coach begins on the third Monday in April. So the Commanders do get 2 extra weeks to work out, to do their offseason workout programs, but those workouts are voluntary and you're allowed to do a maximum of 4 workouts per week. None can be on weekends, and you have 1 mini camp week during that stretch. Again, also voluntary, also not on the weekend. During these workouts and during that mini camp, no contact is allowed. So no live blocking, no tackling, no pass rushing, no bump and run, etc. No more than 90 minutes can be spent on the field, and you can only do what they call dead ball activities with only strength and conditioning coaches allowed on the field at the time they're doing. So what are dead ball activities? Well, dead ball means quarterbacks can throw to receivers, but they can't have any coverage of any kind. Kickers and punters can kick, but no fielding of the kicks, and no snappers or holders are allowed. Long snappers, they're using nets. Defensive players cannot catch footballs no matter who throws it. Can't be cornerback throwing a corner, can't be coach throwing a corner. Defensive backs, defensive players do not catch footballs during this stretch. Workouts can be a total of 4 hours per day. 2 hours of those can be identified by the team. So they basically provide a 2-hour window. This is the time to come in, get on the field with the strength and conditioning coaches, do your things. And the other 2 hours have to be left to the player for weights and other things like that. So if they do show up, the tempo and the intensity is tuned to learning, and player safety is at its highest at this point in time. So yes, they do get a couple extra weeks to work out, to get guys in, to do some instruction type things. But that is all that it is. There will be no pads, there will be no hitting, there will be no install, no play designs, things like that. So good question, Keith. Hopefully that answered that. That's going to wrap up the bonus episode today. Thanks everybody for coming through. Coming up tomorrow, we will wrap up our position group previews for the offseason with the defensive line, interior line, and edge. We're looking at them, and that's going to drop for you Sunday night on Monday morning, however, whenever time you're going to check it out. And then Monday starts all the madness. The open negotiating period, also known as legal tampering, opens up. Deals are going to start getting agreed to, and then Wednesday afternoon, they will start getting locked in. So this week's going to be a lot of fun. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, throw them in the YouTube comment section or text me directly. Do that by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.